Hi guys, this is a casual fan. Now, Sebastian Vettel will not be part of the 2023 Formula 1 grid. Did I see it coming? Yes, I did. So much so that 1 week before Vettel announced his retirement, if any of you guys remember, I had done a video where I had specifically said that I expected him to retire at the end of the season. Now, yeah, it is emotional for me because Sebastian Vettel is one driver whose career I have seen from the beginning to the end, and he's probably the first Formula 1 legend that is retiring from that era. Here we are then with Vettel's career over. He's retired now. Will we see him again? I'm not too confident if that will happen. But that's not what we're here for. I'm here to share the story of Sebastian Vettel, a 4-time world champion. Someone who will be dearly missed, especially by me, to be honest, and someone who left a mark on the sport by being more than just a standout talent. So how was Sebastian Vettel? Well, to do that, I'll take you through one of the most successful careers in the history of the sport. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Let's take a look first at the career recap of what Sebastian Vettel did in his 15-year stint with the sport. Now, Vettel made a surprise Formula 1 debut in 2007 US Grand Prix with BMW. And he was basically a super sub for Robert Kubica, who had a huge accident in Canada just a week prior. Now Vettel, just 19 at the time, will finish the race in P8 and score his first ever Formula 1 point. The point on debut did two things. It made Vettel the youngest driver to score a point in Formula 1, and it brought the opportunity to drive for Toro Rosso from the very next race. At Toro Rosso, Vettel impressed straight away as he finished 4th in the 2007 Formula 1 Chinese Grand Prix, that too in mixed conditions. Now, to put things into perspective, Toro Rosso had not scored even a single point until that race in the entire season. That's right, the first time Toro Rosso scored was with Vettel scoring a P4 at China. In 2008, Vettel proved that he was one of the next superstars of Formula 1. He dominated Toro Rosso's home race in Monza, and on a wet track he secured his first ever career pole position and win. Vettel became the youngest Formula 1 driver to win a race and score pole position. He did it on a wet track in a Toro Rosso by beating the likes of Fernando Alonso in a Renault, Lewis Hamilton in a McLaren, Kimi Raikkonen in a Ferrari, and Robert Kubica in a BMW. The German scored 35 points in that season, and just to put things into perspective, his points were more than what the Red Bull senior team scored in the entire season. Looking at his performances, Vettel got the much needed promotion to the senior Red Bull team, and he would partner Mark Webber in 2009. Now, even before Vettel had stepped into the senior Red Bull team, he had already secured the record for the youngest driver to win a race, youngest to score a pole position, and youngest to score an F1 point. Now, the 2009 F1 season was the year when the technical regulations turned the pecking order upside down. Ferrari and McLaren were not frontrunners anymore, and we had Braun GP dominating the sport. It was also the first year that Red Bull made its move to the front of the grid. While Braun GP and Jenson Button secured both championships, Red Bull and Vettel finished second and showed that the team and the driver were going to be a force to be reckoned with. Now, heading into the 2010 Formula 1 season, even though Red Bull and Vettel had proved themselves to be quite a capable contender, no one took them seriously. There was this interesting pre-season preview by BBC where Formula 1 pundits were asked to pick who will win the 2010 Formula 1 championship. Martin Brundle picked Fernando Alonso, and Eddie Jordan picked Lewis Hamilton. When David Coulthard, a former Red Bull driver himself, picked Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull to win the title, he was laughed off by everyone else on the panel and even called a Red Bull employee.
I want a one-word answer very quickly. The Constructors' World Champion, Jonathan.
I've gone for McLaren.
Ferrari.
McLaren.
Red Bull.
Didn't we know that was going to happen? Didn't we know that was going to happen?
What the hell's that? I don't laugh when you give your answer.
Don't worry, the check is in the post.
Yeah, that's another 20 quid in your back pocket. Let's talk about the drivers as well. David, Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber, done. Martin, who do you reckon could win the Drivers' World Championship?
Fernando Alonso.
Okay.
Hamilton.
Okay, and you don't get an answer after your last one. Oh, go on. Come on.
Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, surprise! Look at that. Right, there you go. Those are the thoughts of our experts ahead of the Formula 1 season.
Now, talking about the 2010 Formula 1 season, it was filled with heartbreak for Sebastian Vettel. He lost a win in Bahrain and Australia due to reliability issues. In the dying stages of the season, Vettel lost another win in Korea once again due to reliability issues. Heading to the last race of the season, Vettel was clearly an outsider in the title battle. He was 15 points behind Alonso, while his teammate Mark Webber was only 8 points behind. As fate would have it, Vettel will win the race, while Fernando Alonso spent the race stuck behind Vitaly Petrov. The title win made Vettel the youngest driver in Formula One's history to become a world champion. In 2011, the defending world champion showed complete and utter domination. He cruised to the title with 11 wins and 15 pole positions, the most pole positions scored in a season by a driver. Vettel became this dominant force that would step into a race weekend and be the outright favourite to win. In 2012, however, things changed. The new regulations and the temperamental Pirellis surprised everyone. We had 7 different winners in the first 7 races. This was also a season where Fernando Alonso, he was in God mode, to be very honest. He put together logic-defying performances in almost every race. There was a moment in the championship when Alonso had a more than 40-point lead over Vettel. And it was from that point onward that Vettel made a comeback in the championship. Now, just to highlight how impressive it was, out of the last 7 races of the season, Vettel won 4 of them and was on the podium for the other 2. Not only that, Vettel secured the title from Alonso at Brazil by just 3 points. And he did it with an impressive comeback drive after he suffered damage and dropped down the order to the back due to a collision on the first lap. Although many people remember the 2012 season for the heroics Alonso put together, Vettel was still very impressive, and you have to give him props for coming back from a 40-point deficit to ultimately win the championship. Now, talking about the 2013 Formula 1 season, not many remember that the first half of the season was complete mayhem as the Pirelli tires were exploding left, right and center. Despite this, Vettel put together what was his best Formula 1 season. Now, the 2013 season is remembered for Vettel's dominant 9-race win streak. But even before that, in the first 10 races of the season, Vettel had won 4 of them and was on the podium for the other 3. It is safe to say that this was the moment where Sebastian Vettel peaked in his career. From the team to the driver and to the surroundings, everything was perfect and nothing could go wrong. Now, the 2014 season was where the tides turned. It was a season that featured a change in regulations as the turbo hybrid era took over. Red Bull was caught out as the Renault power unit was just not competitive. Vettel himself had a very poor season by his standards. He was beaten by Daniel Ricciardo, quite handily even. While Ricciardo was able to pick up 3 race wins that season, Vettel could not even win a single one. With Red Bull seemingly handicapped with an underperforming power unit, Vettel decided to follow his childhood dream of emulating his hero, Michael Schumacher. He triggered the exit clause in his contract and moved to Ferrari to bring the team back to glory, just like his idol had done. Sebastian Vettel's career at Ferrari began with an emotional win at the Malaysian Grand Prix in 2015. It was, however, clear at the time that Ferrari could still not fight with Mercedes. The 2015 season did feature 3 wins for Vettel, including an impressive one at Singapore, but it was quite obvious that Ferrari still had work to do. The 2016 year was a complete write-off. Ferrari could not build on the progress it had made in 2015. The car was just not capable of challenging Mercedes, and even it was struggling to match up with Red Bull. In the end, in that season, there wasn't much to talk about as there were no wins and the team even lost out to Red Bull in the championship standings. Then came the 2017 F1 season where Vettel for the first time had a car capable of challenging Lewis. While it was evident that the Ferrari was still not on par with Mercedes, especially when it came to the power unit, Vettel was still able to stay in contention and had some impressive wins at Bahrain, Australia, Hungary and Monaco. It was, however, the second half of the season where Mercedes finally pulled away. It all started with that massive crash in Singapore where Vettel crashed into Verstappen and Raikkonen. It was during this time that Mercedes had clearly pulled ahead in terms of development and Vettel just could not compete. Ultimately, the 2017 season saw Hamilton sealing the title while Vettel finished second. Now coming to the 2018 Formula 1 season, Ferrari had a probably better challenger to Mercedes. The car had much better straight line, but overall in terms of performance, it was probably a worse season than 2017. The team struggled with internal political turmoil as, while many don't remember now, Mattia Binotto took over Maurizio Arrivabene by the end of that season. Vettel, on the other hand, started making too many uncharacteristic mistakes in wheel-to-wheel battles, especially in the second half of the season when it just faded in terms of performance against Mercedes. 2018 ultimately proved to be just another season where Vettel's challenge ended in the second half as Mercedes and Hamilton surged ahead. Now, the 2019 season was the start of the decline for Vettel, as he was now a big liability when it came to wheel-to-wheel combat. Vettel was outscored by Charles Leclerc, and it did appear that the writing was on the wall for the German. The 2020 season saw Ferrari part ways with Vettel as the German tried to make up his mind if he even wanted to continue racing in Formula 1. The season in itself was a complete write-off. There was nothing to talk about as Vettel struggled with the competitiveness of the Ferrari. It was during this time that Vettel ultimately decided that he was going to join Aston Martin, a midfield team that was showing a lot of improvement. Now, Vettel took some time to get used to life at Aston Martin, and after an early stutter, the German was able to find his feet with the team. He did pick up 2 podium positions, one in Baku and one in Hungary. The other was obviously taken away. The driver was back to racing and doing what he does best. But there were still, however, doubts that remained from Vettel. Vettel wanted to fight for wins and podiums, but Aston Martin had proven to be a disappointment on that front. As a result, when the 2020 F1 Challenger from Aston Martin, it proved to be a dud, to be very honest. It was nothing more than a backmarker. Vettel decided it was time to quit. Even in his last season, Vettel was at the top of his game, and he almost dragged Aston Martin to P6 in the championship. Just for instance, Sebastian Vettel in his very last qualifying session was half a second quicker than Lance Stroll. And that's not a mean feat. Now, in the eyes of many F1 pundits, Vettel does not get the same level of appreciation that a Lewis Hamilton or a Fernando Alonso does. It was even more evident when Ed Straw wrote a piece about Sebastian Vettel after his retirement and said that the German was pretty good, but he was not an elite. Now, call it as it may, there is, however, clear evidence to suggest that this is just not the case. Vettel's titles in Red Bull were not won by just the fastest car. They were won by a driver that had the ability to bounce back from one setback after the other. In the 2010 Formula 1 season, Vettel lost multiple race wins because of reliability. No other driver on the grid, not even his teammates, suffered from that. Just imagine, Vettel had 3 race wins taken away from him. If he had banged on those wins, there would not even have been a championship battle in 2010. He would have sealed the title much earlier. Even in 2012, we tend to talk about Fernando Alonso having arguably the best season in the history of the sport by a singular driver. At the same time, Vettel at one stage was more than 40 points behind. He lost a certain race win in Valencia and another race in Monza. It is Vettel's ability to bounce back from these races which showed a sense of mental fortitude that only an F1 legend will have. Even the Multi-21 incident, which will, to be honest, go down in infamy, but that was Sebastian Vettel at his ruthless best. We were racing. I was faster, I passed, and I won. These have to go down as some of the coldest lines a driver has said to the media, especially considering the backlash he was facing at the time. To add to all of this, the success he achieved at Toro Rosso before moving to Red Bull, or his late career surge at Aston Martin, all of them prove that what we had in Sebastian Vettel was a special talent. Now, in any of Vettel's tributes, something that is probably missed is the fact that Vettel might be getting a lot of love from the fans and the media right now. There was a time when Sebastian Vettel was booed for more than 10 consecutive races. Why? Because he was winning. And because in the eyes of many fans, he was not the guy that was supposed to win. When Michael Schumacher retired in 2006, he left a huge void. A void that both Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton tried to fill in 2007. By 2008, the Formula 1 fans had decided that it was going to be Hamilton or Alonso who would fight it out in the next generation. But when Sebastian Vettel, an even younger driver, burst onto the scene in a car owned by a drinks company, the fans and pundits could not handle the disruption caused by the two of them. The two supposed pretenders in Alonso and Hamilton, they were losing for 4 consecutive years to a German in a car owned by a drinks company, and that did not go down well. By 2013, the fans were almost tired of Sebastian Vettel winning because of how dominant he was. Arguably, a comment that reflected the media attitude towards Vettel was when the German won his 4th title, And we had Martin Brundle commenting on Vettel hugging Adrian Newey, and he said, "The most valuable man in F1 right now, and he does not have blonde hair." A comment that seemingly put down Vettel's achievements to the car that Adrian Newey built for him. The contrast to that is quite visible these days, especially in the way Lewis Hamilton was lauded as the GOAT for winning 6 titles in arguably a more dominant Mercedes.
Down there as well, seen a few champions over the years, and there are 3 men. The 3 men really who have set their stall out and gone on to conquer the world in terms of Formula One. Horner, Newey, Vettel.
Most valuable man in Formula One standing there, and he doesn't have blonde hair.
Doesn't have much hair.
While Vettel might be getting the love right now, for a long time in his career, he was a victim of an unwarranted hate and disrespect towards him. Now, in many ways, while we've talked about the positives, I think it's important that we also talk about the decline that Vettel had at Ferrari. Now, in my view, again, I might be wrong, while it was Vettel's childlike enthusiasm that brought him to the sport and took him to the top, it was this childlike affection for Ferrari that led to his decline as well. As claimed by Mark Hughes as well, by the end of the 2017 season, Vettel knew that he was fighting a lost cause by trying to win with Ferrari. It was during this time that Vettel even had a discussion with Niki Lauda about moving to Mercedes and partnering Lewis Hamilton. This was something that even he recently talked about in the Beyond the Grid podcast. So why did it not happen? Why did we not see Vettel at Mercedes? Well, once again, it was his emotions taking over as he wanted to emulate what his childhood idol had done. He wanted to emulate what Michael Schumacher did. Vettel loved Ferrari and he wanted to win with them, but the stresses of driving for that team took its toll. And in 2018, it started showing in his driving as well. From the moment Vettel started having those crashes in 2018 till the end of his Ferrari stint, Vettel was just not himself as he clung on to a dream that was always going to fade. This resulted in him overdriving the car and having some very strange accidents along the way. One thing that is worth noting here is that ever since he joined Aston Martin, all those crashes vanished. There were maybe 1 or 2 that he might have had, but overall it wasn't him spinning for no reason. When we talk about Vettel, it was his passion that took him to the top of the sport, but it was also his passion that forced him to go after a Ferrari triumph that was never going to happen. And in a way, it tainted his legacy after the successful Red Bull stint. Now, as Vettel packs his bags and says goodbye, what is his lasting legacy? First of all, let's take a look at what he has achieved over the years. He is the youngest Formula 1 champion, the youngest pole position winner, 4th highest championship wins with 4 titles to his name, 3rd highest wins in Formula 1, 4th highest pole positions, longest win ever in F1, most pole positions in F1. Most importantly, he was part of a generation that had Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, and he held his own against them. When you look at these numbers and you look at his career in its entirety, Sebastian Vettel is a Formula 1 legend, and he will go down as one of the best talents to ever drive a Formula 1 car. So now these were my views. What do you guys think? Do let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching and see you next time.